Welcome everyone. My name is Jason Alod, and this is a course about Canvas quizzes. James Bettis is here with me. He's going to help respond to questions in the chat and provide links in the chat and all of that good stuff. We have some other awesome coaches and coordinators with us too. Caroline, Kristen, Anna, Karen are all here. So thank you everybody for being here. And feel free, please stop whenever, ask questions, write them in chat. It's a small group of teachers we have with us, so please let us know what's coming up, what you're thinking about as we go through Canvas quizzes. Canvas quizzes offer a lot of really, I think, neat features, but there's also a lot to it. So I'm not by any stretch of the imagination going to be covering everything. Like, this isn't the be all end all of Canvas quizzes, but I'm going to be showing you some features that I think are kind of neat. and then there's always more to run with here. So for our agenda today, we're going to talk about the two different quiz types as you begin setting the quizzes up, the classic quizzes and the new quizzes. We're going to take a look at a few question types, but not all. But if you have questions about those, and if we have time, we can certainly go over ones that I didn't cover later on in the presentation. We're going to take a look at creating question banks a little bit, and then perhaps a parent observer view, we'll see, and then question and answer, I think, if time allows. So this slideshow is actually more for reference, and I don't think I actually made a new bit.ly for it, unfortunately, but I'll copy the whole link now and paste it in the chat. And I'm not going to be going through this slide by slide right now. I'm just going to be showing you how to do these things in Canvas. But if you want to take a look at the slideshow later on, or at any point here, please feel free to do that. And then if it makes you think of some questions, please go ahead and ask. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Canvas course and get started with this straight away. So I'm doing this assuming that you've opened Canvas before, you know how to get into a course, and then we're right here at the course homepage. And I'm actually going to start getting my quizzes, building my quizzes with the quizzes tab over on the left. And even though I have this quizzes link in the menu disabled and not visible to students, I can still build my quizzes there and add them to modules later. You can also build a quiz directly from a module, but for this one, I'm going to take us into the route of building it from the quizzes link, and then we can add them to modules later on. But anything, I mean, either direction will really work. So here, when I click on that quizzes link, we can see all the quizzes that I've ever created for the sample class. And this, I mean, it is exactly a sample class. So it's where I do all my testing, which is why they all have those like sample names and fake quiz and all of that. But the first thing that I'll do to get the quiz going is to click this plus quiz button, and this window will pop up for me. And I have the choice between using two different quiz engines, the classic quizzes and the new quizzes. And really, depending on what you're doing, there's pros and cons for using either one. And we're going to take the time to go through both of them today. But just in a nutshell, to give you some of the history here, classic quizzes, that's the original type of quizzes, as you may have guessed. There's fewer question types in them, and they're accessed through the quizzes tab in the menu or by selecting quizzes from a module. So that's how you can start setting up the classic quizzes. Benefits that I've found for using classic quizzes is they add points based on the total number of available points in the quiz itself. And we'll dive into that a little bit more later. And then there are some question items in classic quizzes that either are not present in new quizzes or function a little bit differently. New quizzes, as you might have guessed, are the newer addition to Canvas, and they offer more question types than in classic quizzes, but they're accessed through assignments. It's just slightly different. And a quirk that even when I was testing this last week, and so maybe someday this will get fixed, is that when you're setting up point totals in the initial setup on a new quiz, they don't match the number of items that you're adding to the new quiz as you're building it. So it's just something to keep in mind. And I'll show you what I mean. I think showing will make more sense once you see that. So you can correct this. It's not a problem to go and correct it, but it is definitely a quirk. So we're going to select one of the quizzes. I'm going to start with classic just because it's on top. You have this checkbox to say, remember my choice for this course. I would recommend you not checking that because there are actually good features and functionality of using either of the quiz types. And if you check this, when you go to build a new quiz, every time you do this, it'll select the one that you made, the choice you made here by default. You can undo that, but I mean, for me, it's easier to just not do it in the first place than to go back and undo it. So I'd recommend not checking that box there. And then we're going to say submit. And it leads us to our quiz builder. So right off the bat, it kind of looks similar to an assignment. We have an unnamed quiz, and I think we probably don't want to have it called that. So we can give it a better name. Better name quiz. And then here we can go through and start writing any instructions for the students. And you can include a lot here. I mean, it's just the rich content editor like for an assignment, but for the sake of this, I'll just say, oops, do your best. But of course you can add anything that you want to there. Okay, but now let's go ahead and get to the fun stuff. So on this tab, the questions tab is where I can actually start creating the questions that the kids will answer on the quiz. And to do that, I'm going to click this new question button, and it automatically defaults to naming the question and multiple choice. So for the sake of this, I'll just put a number 1 in there, whatever. And then we can leave multiple choice just to show this one process. And then we get to write our question. So let's see, let's say, what color is my car? And then down here, we can just put in the answers. So it's blue, red, green, and we'd move this arrow where the correct answer is. So my car actually is blue, and so we can do that, and then we can update this question. And that's kind of like the start, the very basic of creating a question in classic quizzes. But there's a lot of other neat stuff that you can do with this, and I want to show you some of that right now. So I'm going to open up a new question. And for the sake of making this easy, I'll just call this a number 2. And one of the question types in classic quizzes that I actually really quite like is a formula question. And I think it's kind of an underused one, but it can be really neat, especially with math. And what it's going to end up doing is allowing you to make one question that all the kids will see, like the basic part of the question, but it's going to give many different numbers in there that the students can answer. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's just come up with a quick question. And it tells you right here that you define the variables by typing them surrounded by brackets. So there are X horses in the field. There are, and you can use multiple variables, which is also cool, Y horses in the barn. How many horses in all? Okay. All right, and so let's go ahead and update our question. And then we come up with all of these different values that we can start substituting in for X and Y. So you can get really fancy with this depending on where your students are, depending on like what you're needing them to solve with addition. But for now, we'll just go ahead and leave it as the default, where the minimum is 1 and the maximum is 10. And what this means is Canvas will automatically take any number from 1 to 10 and substitute it in for X. and it'll take any number from 1 to 10 and substitute it in for y, so that when students are getting these questions, one student might have 2 horses in the field and 3 horses in the barn, and another student might have 5 horses in the field and 2 in the barn. And so they're all getting a unique question just based on that one stem. And so we can recompute the value just to give us some idea, but we do need to tell it the formula. So the formula is what the students are actually going to be doing, right? And what they're actually doing in this particular question is they're adding x plus y to find the sum. And so we need to put the formula as x plus y. And then we can do save. And we can choose how many different combinations we want to have Canvas generate. And you can see it's a maximum of 200. And then we can generate, and it will list for us all of the different questions that it's going to be asking of the student. So somebody's going to get 2 plus 4, there's 4 plus 7, 3 plus 5, 9 plus 4, 10 plus 5. And obviously there's different difficulty levels here, right? Like 3 plus 5 stays under 10, and some of these others go over. So as you're doing that, you may want to consider that and maybe adjusting so that they're all kind of in the same playing field. But for this example, you can kind of get the idea, and then we can update that question. And then when students go to take a look at this question, it's going to plug the numbers in there for them automatically. And I'll show you what that means in just a second. But before we get there, I want to show you one other feature in classic quizzes that I really like, and that is inserting equations. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a new question here, and for the sake of this, we'll just call this 3. And I'm going to go ahead and let this stay multiple choice. As you can see, there's really lots and lots of different options, but we're going to stick with just a few for this presentation. So down here, and I think entering equations could be especially helpful in math. So I'm going to click Insert and click on Equation, okay? And we can use all of these different symbols or formulas to give the kids a neat looking math problem. So let's say we're doing fractions, right? And so we can say we have 1/3, and I'm using my arrow keys and the number keys to move this around, plus, and then we can put in another fraction, 1/2. And then we can insert that equation into the content editor. There it is, 1/3 and 1/2. Now, what else is really cool is you're not stuck with only using that equation builder in the rich content editor for the question. You can also put equations in the answers as answer choices. So here, we can come down here and we can just type an answer, or if we click on this edit pencil, we can do the same thing in the answer choices and distractors as we did in the rich content editor. So I'm going to insert an equation, and for this one, we'll put the right answer, 5/6. And then maybe we can start building other ones too. So again, it doesn't work to type in the answer text. We click over on the pencil, we'll tell it we're done there. We click over on this little editing pencil, and then we're going to go insert, we're going to go equation again, and we can come up with a distractor. Like if it was 1/3 and 1/2, I could totally see some kids going like, well, that's obviously 2/5. And now we can say done. And then the kids will have these 2 answer choices with an equation as the answer, so they can kind of get see more of the math. So let's go ahead and update that question. And then I'm going to go ahead and save and publish this classic quiz so we can see what it'll look like from a student perspective. So let's go ahead and click on the preview button. And here we can see, the basic multiple choice question with the text answers. Or if we scroll down, now all of a sudden we have 9 horses in the field and 4 in the barn instead of X and Y. So that's filling in the numbers for you, which is really kind of neat, I think. And then here you can see how that equation builder worked in the new quiz. And the student would just go through and answer this as they would with any other online quiz, and we can submit that. And then they should, maybe it didn't because of it's the test student, but they can get those answers. Oh, there it is, right away. So we see that they got 3 out of 3, and it's telling them the answers they got correct. So kind of neat, immediate feedback, immediate results right there. Some of the question types, obviously, where kids are entering in their own text answers, you're going to have to come in and score those ones. But for multiple choice, things like that, boys, not happy about something. It'll give the kids that immediate answer. So that was the question type that I really wanted to show you for classic. And then I'm going to shift gears a little bit and go back and take a look at new quizzes. So I'm back here on the quizzes tab. And again, I'm going to start just by clicking that plus quiz button and going into new quizzes. Again, I'm not going to check that box because I want to choose every time. I don't want it to choose for me by default. And then I'm going to click submit. Now with new quizzes, it looks like it takes us, and we're going to see this in just a moment, into something just like entirely different. So let's go ahead and call the assignment name, and notice how it's thinking of it as an assignment now. Sample new quiz for presentation 2. And here with the points, I can put down 10 points. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where this isn't going to change. So I can put in 10 points right here, and it's not going to do any adjustment for me. If I end up putting 10 points in here and only write 4 questions, Canvas is still going to think that this is a 10-point assignment. So you can work with that. You can always go back and change this number, but that's the quirk with new quizzes to kind of be aware of here. It's operating like an external tool, but it already put everything in there for you, so you don't have to do anything here. And we can decide who to assign it to, and then we can go ahead and build the thing by scrolling to the bottom and clicking that blue build button. Okay, so it's going to start by having you add instructions just like everything else, and this should look familiar. And you can add other information and resources as you see fit there. But now let's actually look and start doing the questions. So you can see the menu looks slightly different, and there's a lot of different question types that you can use, and I'm going to walk you through a few of them. And let's start, just because it's on top, with categorization. So this is where you can have a number of categories, and kids are like organizing the information into one or the other. So let's set up a categorization question so you can see what I mean. So for the sake of this, we'll just have the title be number 1. And I'm going to tell them to organize into US states or Canadian provinces. Maybe this is a geography quiz. Okay, so then we're going to develop our categories. Category 1 we'll have as US states, and category 2 we'll have as Canadian provinces. In case you people, and if anyone doesn't know, provinces for Canada are kind of like our states. And then we can come down and start typing in the answers, the way that they should be organized if kids were going to organize them correctly. So we'll just stick on the West Coast. We can have Washington and Oregon and California as the US states. And then over on the Canadian province side, let's go from west to east, so we can have British Columbia and Alberta and oh my gosh, I don't know if I can spell Saskatchewan correctly, but I'm going to go with that. Hopefully that's it. And so the kids will definitely will eventually organize these into the two categories. And one other option that you have that's kind of neat is that you can add additional distractors that don't fit into either category, just to really see if the kids have an understanding of whatever you're testing them on. So maybe we want to say New South Wales, which is a state in Australia, and Scotland, which is a country in the United Kingdom. And so if this were something with math, we could have an on-screen calculator if we wanted, obviously not for geography. And then we'll say we're done with the category question. And then eventually when the kids will get this, these will be all mixed up and they have to click and drag them into the proper category. So kind of a neat option there. Another one that you can do with kids that I think is kind of neat, that's not in the classic quizzes, is the ordering question. So ordering is kids are just going to be putting things in a sequence from, beginning to end, whatever. So I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So we'll have this be number 2, and we can say, order from least to greatest. And they will be able to put these in order. So our top label we'll say is least, and let's make this one super easy. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Our bottom label will be greatest. And then again, depending on what you're doing, you can have that calculator or display answers differently. But for the sake of this, we're just going to say we're done, and I'll show you what all these look like when we're finished with this. We made that one kind of easy, so it came out. When I show you the sample, these will be all mixed up. So even though it's all correct now, the kids will have to put them in order. One question type that I think is really kind of neat is called the hotspot question. And the hotspot question, so we'll call this number 3, is one that lets you upload a picture, and then we'll have it so the kids click on the picture where the correct answer is. So I guess I'm kind of on a geography kick right now. So let's have this question be, click on the state of Colorado. Okay. So I'm going to need to find a picture of the United States, a US map. And if you have one already saved on your computer or something, that's fine. If you don't, this is something that's pretty easy to find. US map blank, just a quick Google search, and you're probably going to find something that's going to work for this. And so we can take a look here, and that this is perfect. It's exactly what I need, and I can save that image. And now when I come back to do my hotspot question, I'm going to browse, and I find my US blank map. And now you get to see why I picked Colorado. You can do it with any state, but Colorado is easy. You can do a square and just like click and drag, or an oval. But typically with something like this, you're going to be wanting to use the polygon feature. Colorado's right here. So I can click right in the corner of the state and drag it, and then click again, and you can start to see where it's making this outline. And then we can close it up. And so now, when we're done here, if the kids click anywhere in that area, they're going to get credit for solving this problem. So let's go ahead and say we're done. And right now we see that Colorado is all highlighted in blue, and it's like, what? This will be easy. But when the kids get the problem, the map will be blank. They won't see this, and they'll actually have to know where that is and click on it. There's way more uses than just geography for this. When I presented this to one of our district high schools a few years ago, science teachers were so psyched because they were thinking about using this for having kids identify like pieces of a cell. I mean, there's just lots of ways you could incorporate this into your content. And then there's one other question type that I think is really neat in the new quizzes, and that is the stimulus. So when you create a stimulus question, what it's going to do is build two panes for you. And on one pane, it'll be anything that you want, the students reading or learning or whatever. And on the right side will be the questions that they need to answer about it. So if you think about a test type, say, that has a reading passage on the left side and questions about the passage on the right side, that's kind of something that we're working on here. So let's say, we've just been going with numbers, so we'll call this 4, and we'll say read the passage and answer the questions. Okay, and you can import images, you can have video here, you can put a link in that will link to something else. For the sake of this today, just to do it really quickly, I'm just going to copy and paste some text, just the opening lines to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but I mean, seriously, you can put just about anything in here. And then, so this is the passage, this is the information that the kids will be reading from. And over on the right-hand pane, then we can start adding some of the questions that they need to answer. So we're going to go ahead and attach questions. There it is, the blue little attach questions button. And what's really neat about this stimulus and passage question is that you can choose any of the options for classic quizzes, or for new quizzes, I mean, that we've already been over. So if it would make sense to, have a hotspot or a fill in the blank or formula or whatever, you can use any of them. For this sample though, I'll just use multiple choice. And so our question stem could just be something super simple like, who is the main character? And then we can type our answers. Is it Alice? Is it Jason? Or is it James? And then we can add another answer if we want to, and then we can tell it that we're done. And you can continue adding these questions for, oops, we'll add one more. The white rabbit. Okay, now we can be done. And then the kids would read the passage and then select that answer. So we've got this nice quiz built now, and we can do a preview of it to see what it will look like for kids. So it doesn't look like the student view, the glasses, it's a little bit different. You click on that preview button, but then you can start seeing everything, how it looks from the kids' perspective. So you can see we're clicking and dragging US states, Canadian provinces, just to show you this real quickly. And then we're going to be left with a couple at the bottom that don't belong into either category. So that's how that looks when it goes out to the kids. Ordering from least to greatest, see how it's out of order now. So we can, the kids can move those around. And then this is our state. See, we have to find Colorado. It's not outlined anymore, so we have to click right on it. And then we can do the main character bit. And then when the kids go to submit, okay. We can, right away, they're gonna see, oh my gosh, I didn't finish that, We got that right. We've got Colorado correct, and we've got the correct main character. So that's kind of how it just looks from their end when they're adding to the new quizzes. So let's go ahead and exit this preview now. And we can return. Okay. I think I called this sample new quiz for presentation 2. There we go. And here's what I was talking about, and I think now this is kind of the third time I've mentioned this. Remember when we first set this up, I put in 10 points, but there's actually only 4 questions, and it doesn't update for us. So we do need to come back in here and make that change if you're counting the total number of points just in this itself. And then we can save that change and save and publish. And then that new quiz will be ready for the kids, and the number of correct answers will match what the number of questions or the number of items that you have on the quiz. So that's how kind of that all works. There's a couple other things with quizzes that I did want to show you. And one of those is the question bank. So let's go ahead and manage our question banks. The question banks for new quizzes and classic quizzes operate a little bit differently, but we'll start with classic quizzes. So this is a classic quiz bank, and what a question bank really is for is that you can save the questions that you write from any quiz and then import them from the bank into any new quizzes that you are writing. So whenever I write a quiz question, all of those questions end up in this unfiled questions question bank. So any question I've ever written is in here. But let's say, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that one. And that one. Let's say I want a new question bank, and I could call this like math questions. All right. And now I can add questions to this question bank. So I'm going to start by going to my unfiled questions, because again, they're all in there. I must have done something wrong with my math questions. There we go. I'm going to start by going into my unfiled questions. And then I can move any of these or copy them to my new question bank, my math one. So maybe I want this question in my math question bank. So I can move or copy this question, and then I can select my math questions, and I can move and copy that question there. If I keep this box checked, it keeps the copy of it in the unfiled questions as well, if I wanted to go back there and find it again. So I can move and copy. And now, if I go back and just look at my question banks, I can see that in my math questions question bank, I have that question in there now. And I can continue adding as many of these as I want. I can also move multiple questions to my question bank. If I wanted to go through one at a time though, that's the way to do that there. With the new quizzes, it's a little bit different. So let's go back and open up a new quiz again. I should come up with another word instead of sample so I don't lose them all the time. Sample new quiz for presentation 2, I believe is what it was. There we go. Okay, so here I can go in and build and get back to the questions I was working on. Okay, and I can actually add these to the banks like as I start working through these. So if I come down here, item banking, and I can add that to a bank right there. And I can just do it question by question as I write the new questions in the question bank. And so then I can either add it to a bank that I already have, or I can come up with a new item bank and you know, maybe I want geography or something. And then I can add it to that question bank. So, okay, you can add it in there. So that's how we can start adding to the question banks in the new quizzes. So you can see that these two systems really kind of operate differently, but it's how we can get them in there from the new quizzes, so that you just do it question by question as you're building. Okay. Parent view of quizzes. So for parents on a PC or a computer, I mean, a Mac would work fine. They can actually click on the quiz that the student took, and they're able to look at the question items and see the responses of the kids. So that's kind of neat. So if you do have your parents in as observers, they can do that. I think it's important to note that, you know, as of the last time I checked, parents who access the course on a mobile device can see whether or not the quiz has been submitted and the score that the students got on it, but they aren't actually able to dig in deeper and see the the student's actual work and response. So there is a big difference with Canvas, whether parents are accessing on a mobile device or accessing on a computer. And I think that when you have your initial parent meetings, when you're telling them that, when you're encouraging them to sign up as an observer, it's just important that they understand the distinction that there's just a lot more visibility if they're on a computer rather than a mobile device. And I think that's just kind of important for them to understand. So very last thing I want to show you, and this is actually a presentation that I first wrote to try to fit into a half an hour. And I can tell you that going through it in an hour-long block is so much more friendly, and I don't feel like I'm pulling my hair out trying to go at the speed of light getting through this. So hopefully it's a good pace for you right now. But oops, I didn't mean to go back to my dashboard. But I wanted to show you what it would look like on the grading end of things. So let's go ahead and go back into quizzes. And I'm going to go ahead and open up that sample classic quiz that I created. I can find the right one. Sample classic quiz for presentation 2, wasn't it? Oh, it's okay, it doesn't really matter. So let's just go into this sample classic quiz for presentation. And then you can access and grade the quizzes in Speedgrader as well. And I think it'll put in a test student view for me. So let's see if I can do that. So student view and resume. Oh yeah, this is a way more difficult one. We've got 38 horses in the barn and 83 here. 83 on the field, my goodness. So that's 17 to 100 and then 21. What is that, 121? And then we'll go here and I'm going to go ahead and submit this. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and leave my student. Oh, I got it right. Yes. We're going to leave student view. And then let's go into Speedgrader and see if it did my test student for me. Awesome. And so from Speedgrader right here, I can see the answers that the students got correct, and all that's in there. And then I'm able to write feedback and submit it. And you can also, I mean, there's some other things too you can do with this little cog for options. One thing that's fairly new is that you can grade question by question, which is kind of neat. So if your style, if it works better for your style to like grade all the number 1s in the class and then come back and grade all the number 2s in the class, that's what that option is. And I think for some tests that might be really helpful. This is one that graded it for you, but in questions where there's short answers or essay type questions, that might be helpful. Just so I know it would be for me, so I have that same focus as I'm going through each of the same question types instead of grading one whole student test at a time. And then if you wanted to hide the student's name in Speedgrader, if you were worried about just making sure the student stayed anonymous and being fair, it's an option too. So just a couple of those settings. But again, on the quizzes that just grade themselves, it's not something that you'd really need to worry about too much. So we managed to get through all of the pieces that I had planned to do. But I would love at this point if people have any questions, or if James, if things are coming up in the chat or other things you're wondering about, I will absolutely do my very best to answer any of those right now.
There were a couple things, so it might be helpful, Jason, if you want to show. So I mean, there was
sure,
a question. I'm going up. Well, way up above there was like adding pictures to quiz questions, and I think it could apply in both the original version and new, right? As long as there's a rich content editor box, you could add a picture.
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, with the classic quizzes, you just need to click on that little pencil icon And then the full rich content editor will come up and you could import any picture into there. With the classic quiz, now I'm not remembering whether there's a pencil or not, but I think you do have that content editor, and then you could add those pictures there as well.
Okay. One other question was, when you were talking about updating the total points on the quiz, but it came up, you could also you could just make items worth as many points as you want, right? Like each individual question could be worth a different number of points if you wanted.
That is true, but you would have to, they're not going to match automatically. So you're going to have to make that adjustment and you're still going to have to make that adjustment if you have a total point score.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So if you edit the individual question points, you have to, in new quizzes, you have to go update the total number of points, correct?
Absolutely. So yeah, so let's just say, like, when you're initially setting it up, you're like, hey, I'm going to have 5 questions. They're going to be worth 2 points each, so 10. But then as you're writing the quiz, you end up with 6 questions worth 2 points each. You're going to have to go back and make that adjustment. No matter what you do, it's not going to line it up equally automatically, if that makes sense. So, I mean, it might just work out perfectly, but you just need to check it to make sure they're the same. It just doesn't automatically update it, which is kind of too bad.
Okay. And then there's a couple. Okay. Karen, thanks for writing about putting pictures as answers. And then there's a question about, oops. There's a question about the RCE. Can you use the RCE with math symbols in new quizzes for math questions? Do you think you could?
Yeah, let's see that.
Take a look and see if that's possible.
I believe it is.
Thanks.
Let's pull that one up. Okay, let's add another one here. And let's just do a multiple choice. Let's see, is this the formula? Yeah, there it is. So it just looks a little bit different, a lot different actually, but it's this like f of x bit. And then if you click on that, then you can put in the equations there as well.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I think you got it. Anyone else, maybe I missed your question in the chat, or maybe you just want to unmute and ask a question that you had. Feel free to either type it or unmute.
Yeah, and if it's perfectly okay to not do too. Our team is awesome and we're here for you. So if you're building a quiz and something comes up, please reach out to your instructional tech coach, and we're more than happy to help you with it, because you know, things will come up as you're in the moment. This recording will get put up on the website too, so you can always go back to it. And then, you know, there's just lots of resources out there to help out, but definitely don't hesitate to contact any of us. That's what we're here for, and we always love hearing from you.